Hello everybody and welcome back to my Raging Germany series. I have some good news and bad news. The bad news is that once again when I was recording my microphone was not being picked up and would just occasionally chime in with these really brief high-pitched screeches. So just like before, I'm going to try to narrate after the fact, which is really unfortunate because I try to share, live action with you guys and stuff like that. The good news is that this segment had an amazing finish. Obviously, you can see it's quite long. It's not the half hour that I was doing before. So I hope you will stick around, and I will do my best to get everything to mesh up for you guys. Because I know last time my synchronization was a little off. Now, before I started this segment, I had noticed something off camera. Well, two things actually here. You can see I'm changing my mind about the spearman and the warrior. And the reason why is because I was thinking of our march to our next target being primarily composite bowmen. So I figured, okay, if we lead with one spearman, we'll have a blocker, and that way the warriors can stay behind, get upgraded to swordsmen, and then join the fight. And then in the meantime, those guys on the front line can be whittling down the army before we actually press on to the city. That's what I had noticed and steered into, and you'll see that it actually worked out quite well. Pardon me. The other thing I had noticed off camera was that all this time we had been talking about going to Persia first. Geographically, they're right next door. However, I think I mentioned we had noticed in the second part that India's religion has pagodas, okay? And they're on flat land. It's an easily accessible capital. They have 3 sugars and 1 dyes, so not only do they have two unique luxuries for us, one of which we're currently trading for, but they also have multiple copies of it. But more importantly than all of that is they've built Stonehenge. And they have the pantheon of god of or stone circles, I think it's called, and they have 2 quarries in their city. So just by taking that capital, we would have the 5 faith per turn from Stonehenge as well as 4 faith per turn from 2 quarries in a city with stone circles. For this reason, I determined that going after India's capital first would probably be better because that gives us time to annex the city, purchase a profit because we're going to be making a lot of faith out of nowhere, and spread the religion to our cities, at which point we would be able to start building pagodas. Here a camp shows up, so we start chasing after it. And then the other thing is that Persia's religion has mosques, which isn't as good as pagodas from a happiness standpoint, but does give additional faith. But they also have the follower belief of the 100 gold every time a city converts. So I may be getting a little too ambitious, but it occurred to me that what I could do is take over India's city, spread their religion to my people, buy pagodas, and then when I take over Persia, use their religion to sweep into my city, and every time I successfully convert, we'll be making 100 gold off of that, and that way my cities can have mosques and pagodas because the buildings themselves don't go away. They don't become less effective just because you're following a different religion. So that's potentially a lot of happiness, a lot of faith gain. But most importantly, I think it's a good enough reason to aim for India first, was my thought process. So, now that said, I would like to address a couple of things that came up in the comments. And I really want to thank you guys. Holy crap, I don't know if you guys are sharing it or reposting it or what, but the first segment blew up in terms of popularity. And the second segment has had a lot of comments, even like right away. So I really enjoy all of that, all the chatter. I really like that. One of the things that came up is somebody had pointed out that I kept saying human monument. And just as a reminder, in the honor tree is a policy called military caste, and it basically says if you have a garrison, which just basically means a unit on the city tile, like we have our hand axes here. If you have a garrison, that city has +1 happiness and +2 culture. Now, a monument is a building in a city that provides the +2 culture. Because I'm a Liberty player, it's almost always the first thing I build. But here, since we have military caste, as long as we have somebody that can stay on the city tile, here we have an amazing capture. We clear a Barbarian Camp and we get that 5th archer that I really wanted. So that was really, really good icing on the cake, so to speak. So yeah, when you have the military caste policy, basically parking somebody on the city tile, it's as if you had built a monument, which in this case we use to our advantage by having our expands build libraries first so that we can start steering towards the National College. So I hope that clears all that up. I'm trying to think off the top of my head other comments that we had, but I've kind of been ignoring the game narration, so I'd like to try and stick to that. You can see we found a couple of camps. We started chasing after that. We're developing the tiles in our new expand, though we are getting to a point where there's just the workers are pretty much caught up, so we'll be addressing that soon enough. So anyway, since I intended on going to India first, I decided with the second caravan we probably had time to throw that at Persia. Now, I didn't look back on the second segment. I don't know at which point we would have figured out, oh, they got a superior religion. Oh, we can go do them first. Here we checked the scores because when I met Arabia, I saw they had composite bowmen and swordsmen, and I didn't have either yet, so I just wanted to know where they stood. Unfortunately, this would be a big detractor from going after India first because we simply don't have the military to be in 2 places at once. For the most part, we're going to leave some units behind in our backfield. Here we meet Washington, so we're starting to meet more and more trade partners, but as you can see, nobody actually wants to trade anything for us. So if Arabia ends up getting upset with the fact that we took India's capital, they are, at this point at least, they do appear to be the nearest neighbor, so they might be able to sense that our army's off taking Persia and they can just go and liberate Delhi. I hope that doesn't happen, but that is one of the problems with Arabia being so advanced militarily speaking. So I'll try my best to mention, like when we go into the menus, like when I checked the info addict to check where Arabia's science was compared to ours. So we need to start pulling back. My goal here at this point was, since we did have a bit of a home defense, but we were gearing up to war, once we finished the wheel, it would be time to start marching our archers towards... here I checked the, you can see I checked the time for border growth and moved that worker over there. Because like I said, we're pretty much caught up with that city, so we can start building into roads. There I built a farm on top of that hill because it is freshwater, so come time for civil service, that'll be even more food. Unfortunately, Berlin's tiles grew into the ivory instead of the iron. That was a big disappointment, so we're going to have to buy that tile because we need to have the iron in our trade network in time to be able to upgrade our swordsmen. So yeah, I've got the archers. They're starting to head over to where they need to be. Start heading towards the west, basically. We got to keep them in our borders, and this is part of the reason why I decided to swap out that spearman, because now the spearmen should be free to start marching over towards India, and then once the archers are upgraded to composite bowmen, they'll be right behind them. And looks like I did a fairly good job of coordinating all that. And then, of course, once construction is finished being research and ironworking is on the agenda, we can do the same thing with the backfield warriors. Unfortunately, that means that spearmen up there, that's basically been visibility for our city-state trade routes, or what was supposed to be our city-state trade routes, is going to have to come back, because our homeland defense is mostly going to be that one spearman and one composite bowman. And we do have hand axes in the cities. Not in Hamburg right now because we needed to make way to get the archers as far forward so that after they upgrade they can keep on cruising towards India. But it's, my intention is to basically treat it that if we do need emergency. In fact, I think it might even be safe to say that I've been a little too religious with my military cast. I'm guessing if I wasn't playing Germany and I wasn't getting all these free units, I'd have units stepping out of the garrison left and right just because, just to deal with like barbarians and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, if in addition to having that spearman and the composite bowman in the backfield, we do have hand axes near each city. We do have a fair amount of visibility. And this is kind of nice. I'm so glad I thought to expand that third city because it wasn't my intention early on. But not only does that help raise our unit supply, but it also adds visibility to reduce the amount of camps. Because farming those camps for free units was great in the opening turns, but now we're getting at a point where we'd be hemorrhaging units. And people have been giving me some ideas on what to do with those units, so it's not like it's the end of the world if we were to take on so many units. But settling that third city did a great job of just kind of smoothing those potential problems out altogether. We definitely had the space for it, and we definitely had a good spot for it. Now, somebody had asked me about settling on the hill that I chose to rather than the coast to the, I believe, southeast of that. And the reason for that is I do like settling on hills if it's practical. Sometimes it's not. And the tile he mentioned would have been off a hill. He mentioned this tile because it would have allowed me to... Here I noticed that I forgot to, start working the better growth tile. We're just about to the point where it's time to relinquish that cattle to Berlin. But anyways, going back to the settle location of Munich, he had mentioned if I had gone down to the tile to the southeast, I would have been able to grab some fish off to the east coast. And that's true, but also the city tile itself would have had 3 tiles of water on it, which would have made it very vulnerable to a sea attack. Now, I'm not very well versed. Oh, notice here that I think it's Hong Kong appears to be ripe for tribute, and I'm pretty sure I just missed that altogether. So, unfortunately, there's some gold we missed out of. It was probably around 85, 90 gold at this point. So that's unfortunate. But anyways, I'm not very experienced with like mid to late game warfare, so I've never actually been in a situation where, or at least if I ever was, it was so long ago I don't actually recall it. But I've never been, as far as I know, in a situation where a city fell to a navy. But anyways, here we go. We're starting the march towards Delhi. Unfortunately, right as we do, a camp shows up here, so I bring the warrior up. To kind of act as defense. Luckily, we don't, except for that cattle there between cities, we don't really have any developed tiles to the north, so I'm kind of trusting the bombard and that hand axe to take over. Luckily, we're at a point where the library in that city is finished and the monument's getting built, so even if we do have to step the hand axe out, it's not the end of the world. Here, this camp spawns up, and I'm looking at the territory, and I'm figuring we can take that out quicker than the one up there in the rough. So I think I chose to go down to that one first. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we got to get this hand axe out of the way just so the spearmen can slide through and get down to that southern camp. Just because we got all this flat land in the southern, I figured like it would be easy to skate down there, take it out, and then... yeah, so here India actually finishes the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, which is really, really nice because those he's already got the 2 quarries in his city, so there's extra gold we're going to get from taking that city. But it also has the side effect of plus 100 gold every time a great person is expended. And I think their religion also had a belief, something like plus... was it 50 or 90 faith every time a great person is expended? So, I mean, if we find a situation where we need to drop a citadel, we're going to get gold and faith for that, I believe. Maybe you guys can help me out with that belief thingy because I don't know how that works. If it's one of your cities is following that religion, I don't know. Like the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus seems to just affect your empire as far as that goes, but like the other one's a belief. So I'm not sure if it's got to be from a city that like has that belief. I don't know. But the mausoleum also provides great merchant points and I think culture. I'm not sure about that one, but anyways, the point being is that right after we decided we're going to be heading for India, they sweetened the pot by building this other. Uh, it's not the greatest wonder in the world, but obviously it's gold oriented, so that's going to be a thing as we move forward. Obviously, as we have, because we're Germany, we have 25% unit maintenance, but I think it's safe to say at this point the reason why we're running at a turn-by-turn deficit is because of the size of our military. So that'll be nice, and that's also going to be nice. Like once we take over the city, um, we can count on. We would be able to count on the duplicate sugar being sold off, for example. Um, Obviously, since I'm narrating this after the fact, I have the benefit of a little bit of foreknowledge. But even based on what we can see, it's clear. Now here, as I was scouting, I almost had missed this city-state border. It kind of blended in for me because I was I guess just mostly focused on coordinating the war. Speaking of which, somebody had pointed out to me that there's a barbarian camp down there. It's just got a brute and it's got a worker, and my scout there could probably take it. And I wanted to address that. That is totally right. That is a very good idea. I thank you guys so much for bringing that to my attention. I did just want to point out that the one, unfortunately, I didn't read that comment until I had already recorded this section, so that's why, if it looks like I'm not making any effort towards that would be why. I did want to point out that my one concern with that approach is that because Raging Barbarians is on, it's entirely possible that while the uh, Scout is in a somewhat vulnerable position. There might be a second that spawns, and then he's just kind of got to defend and let them whittle down. And while that's happening, another one spawns. It's entirely possible that it will be a fruitless endeavor. On the other hand, tying our time down with that would slow our scouting, which right now is not exactly a bad thing, because the fewer civilizations we meet while we're going to war and stuff, the better. So I don't remember where the scout ends up at the end of this particular part. This was a long part, so well, I guess we'll see together. But that would be my one concern as far as actually taking that route. Now, if you'll recall from earlier when we were bringing our scout through here, India had a lot of warriors. I see one and we're coming, so I decided, okay, I'll go ahead and start talking some crap to him. He coalesces, which is weird because he's only got the two cities. And if I remember correctly, India's special ability, I don't know. I think as a rule of thumb, I tried to remember it as if you're going tradition, you're better off with 3 cities instead of 4. I don't quite recall what. Oh wait, something about their city happiness is doubled, but their population unhappiness is halved. Something along those lines. They do better with fewer cities, basically. Happiness wise. So yeah, we're chasing after this camp here. Kind of hoping. Oh yeah, here we can see that Arabia opens up with some trade options, and one of those is dyes. So it is important to remember that we're heading towards Delhi, and Delhi already has some dyes. In fact, I think we could already see they're developed. So I'm not sure why there's a pause in the action here. Obviously I ramble sometimes, so there's probably something I was explaining on camera. But anyways, so as far as trading with Arabia, we definitely don't want to trade for the dyes because we would be kind of wasting our time and effort. Here I think I was studying of different religions or something. I don't recall. I apologize. And no, I'm not Canadian. Somebody asked me on one of my other videos if I'm Canadian because I'm always apologizing, and that's not it at all. Based on the comments I've received, people like what I deliver because of my personal touch, my voice, the way I explain things, the way I think about things, things like that. So, and I do fancy myself a bit of a min-maxer, so I don't like it when I miss out on opportunities. That's why the comment of, oh, hey, that scout can handle the Barbarian Camp with the Brute. Oh, yeah, and I didn't even finish sharing what his... here we denounce him because we're just continuing to march on. He had pointed out that because the scout probably could take it on and there was a quest for it, and there's a good possibility that the worker in that camp also belonged to the same city-state, that by clearing that camp and giving the worker back, which might make sense because it's so far away from home, we could be instant ally with a city-state. And when you think about it, the trade-off, it's probably worth trying, because at any point, if it turns out to be a problematic endeavor, we could just pull the scout out and heal up. Because he does have, if I'm not mistaken, he does already have the survivalism promotion at this point. Now here we finish off the iron, and I was mindful of the fact that we got 6 iron. We only have 3 brutes, but it might have been a good idea to hold on to 1 extra iron just in case we get 1 more brute or something like that. So I didn't know. I didn't know if I was going to sell off 2 or 3 here. I wanted to distribute between Arabia and Washington, just to. We hadn't traded with either one yet, but Washington only had the 1 gold per turn. So in the end, Arabia only wanted the 2, and I didn't have to consider how many to sell off any further than that. Also, going back to that Barbarian Camp, something that's a little bit embarrassing as far as how tunnel vision I got in the war for Delhi, and why historically I, shut off the recording at about the half-hour mark, is after I had taken Delhi, I started moving my units towards Mumbai. I had no intention of taking the city. It's just Delhi had taken some damage on the ground. Here we're basically shopping around, seeing if anybody will pay us to go to war. But I had done some damage to the city tiles, and I needed a worker. He didn't actually have a worker stashed. After building the roads, I guess his workers were up in Mumbai. So I started marching towards Mumbai for a purpose of getting a worker. And it never occurred to me that I've got some melee units right there. I've got some composite bowmen right there. It would be nothing to just swoop out the back and take out that camp. At which point it might be worthwhile to actually keep the worker for ourselves, because India is so far away from our empire. So that's something that we might look forward to the beginning of the next section, as opposed to actually returning it. Now here I did not want to push my spearmen into the tile, but it would finish off the unit, so I did anyways. And then here we have a small traffic jam with our composite bowmen, which is fine. And as luck would have it, I don't know if you saw that notification, but as luck would have it, this was the exact turn that our trade with Gandhi Ivory for sugar expired. So unfortunately for the next few turns, we're out the happiness. But once we conquer Delhi, we get the sugar right back. So that was actually a nice little piece of timing, because the alternative would be that we go to war with Persia first, and there's a bit of a overlap with the renewal or something like that. Anyways, all the warriors are piled in. They're ready to get their upgrades. We got the iron farmed up. So, and the timing of all that was not unintentional, you know what I mean? I made sure. It's real unfortunate that the city tiles didn't grow. That's the whole reason we researched bronze working. Now here we get an extra spearman, and although that puts us over the unit cap, that's really fantastic, because since I sent the whole army pretty much off to war, we have a very, very light home defense battalion, and we've got multiple spots that camps will be forming. So now that we have an additional melee back on the home front, that's a good thing. It's also pretty good because, well, I'll get back to that in a second. Here we got a delicate situation. You can see I'm shooting at the brute that's next to my exposed archer, but I didn't finish him off because I couldn't, and I didn't want to damage him so much that he might retreat. So here I was fully expecting for one of the archers to get hit. I don't think he did. I don't remember. We'll find out together. But anyways, the fact that it was a spearman that we got was really nice, because moving forward, when we push towards Persia, it's probably going to be with pikemen. So getting more spearmen at this point now that our swordsmen are off marching on India. Um, Here, I think when I was looking at the various attack powers, I think it had to do with India's unique unit is the war elephant. And I knew it was a mounted unit. I thought it was a replacement for horses, but later on you can see we get into the Civilopedia. But this is another reason why it's really good to bring a spearman here to lead this first wave of attack. He's just sitting there and defending, and all these warriors, these Indian warriors, are going to come at us, and we're just going to whittle them down with our composite bowmen. But we got to be smart about how we do it, because if we, like, that's the whole reason I didn't take a second shot on that warrior that's right next to my composite bowman on the hill. Simply because I didn't want it to retreat. I wanted it to stick around or at least stay within range or something like that. That might have been a mistake. It might have been better to just weaken him as much as possible. That way chasing him down is literally one step and shoot. I didn't give it too much thought. So anyways, these two that I just moved have a responsibility up in the north in the jungle, and the other spearman's just going to hang out in the south. I made some mistakes with that as well. Mistakes I might not have made if I was cutting it off in half-hour segments. So I hope you guys are enjoying that these segments are longer. This particular series is such a blast to play. It's real easy to get carried away, but this segment in particular is it's really easy to identify the folly in that. Now, I fully understood here that he might go for the cattle, and therefore the bombards would be somewhat less effective, but literally it was the only option we had at this point. Usually okay, here we go, back to the war. Okay, so the one guy did retreat, and that's unfortunate because that composite bowman can't reach him because of the forest on the Iron Hill. It's interesting that he doesn't have that tile within his borders yet. And also, we gotta reach the back warrior here as much as possible. Unfortunately, we can only hit him with the one. There's no point with this particular archer hitting the guy on the dies because we have some back archers. Here I'm just looking at who could use the experience more, I think, and then we get set up. Because we're going to have some people go across the river. You can see a lot of flat land in the south and the southeast. So we don't want to get too far away from the spearmen, but right now we're just kind of whittling the units down. That was the whole point of this first wave. It gives the swords or the warriors time to actually heal up. Now here I decided I was going to start pre-building the road, and I wanted to step up on the hill to start with that tile first. Unfortunately, hand axe comes swooping in, so we had to change that. So yeah, we took the spearmen and the composite bowmen just for the purpose of, using the time between construction and ironworking to start making a difference. And we had seen earlier that Gandhi had quite a few warriors, so we had no idea how good his army was. We knew it was subpar to ours from Info Attic when we checked. But Info Attic tells you overall strength. It doesn't tell you how that's distributed. Like, does he have 10 warriors or 1 artillery? It just doesn't tell you that. So here, unfortunately, he does decide to come after. Now, I don't know if the honor opener actually addresses the bombard. It kind of looks like it to me, though. Those are some pretty hard hits. So even after he pillages that tile, it's not the end of the world. Here we see it's safe for that other worker to step up on the hill to start thinking about roads. So here we see that we got an opportunity to cross the river. However, doing so would have us up against that warrior. I probably should have crossed the river and just had the other guy come to the river, because even if we got attacked, we would have smoked that guy. And we have a little bit of time to heal up our archers if they get hurt. So I think I probably should have crossed the river there. It would have given us a more forward presence, which I think is a worthwhile endeavor. Here I choose circus, and it's not a bad idea because a circus is maintenance-free happiness, and we're going to need all the happiness we can get. It's entirely possible that it would have been a better idea to build a fishing boat next, because there is a fish tile in that city. I think in one of the final turns of this segment, after the circus is done, I choose Colosseum, And at that point, the fishing boat instead would, or the workboat instead, would have been better. So I think you can count on the next segment, one of the first things I do, changing the building project. But it was like one of the, I don't know even know if we put production towards it or not. Anyways, our official home turf death squad's making its way up to the northern camp. Yeah, we lost a tile improvement along the way, but you know, that happens sometimes. It doesn't usually happen to me because I'm usually a little more adamant, but here it was a time of, this is Raging Barbarians basically. So this was to be expected based on the way I played it. And if you see the way the war played out, it probably was a mistake to send all of that manpower. It's swordsmen at this point are pretty good, so it just wasn't. Oh, okay. So here, yeah, I forgot about this. Here, based on what we can see, it would appear that it was something of a good idea not to cross the river. We probably would have gotten a little more destroyed. That might have been my apprehension out first, and it turned out to pay off. So this could be considered like a teaching moment. Decide for yourselves, you know, the kind of risk you want to take and what the potential recourse is. I think part of the reason I wanted to stay back is because I didn't have eyes over there yet. We do have a scout on the other side. It might have been a good idea to bring him up just for visibility. But he's just, you know, finishing out the completeness of the scouting. So. Okay. Alright, so here we do pass the, because we're somewhat damaged, so we got to take a moment to heal up, or two. Yeah, here already I'm not even working the best tiles because I'm not working the fish tile. Luckily that city has some pretty good growth tiles anyways. So now the worker should be free to get back to the roads. Oh wait, no, I think I'd send him to the repair that cattle tile before the roads. It actually, as you watch, now here's one of the mistakes I started to make. Obviously I see this camp spawning right next to our deer, so that's kind of a problem. Luckily the spearman's right there. It would have been a really good idea for me to start acting upon that camp. You know, spearman to spearman, yeah, he's defended. I might have to heal up a few turns, but he would ultimately be able to clear it. And instead, I wasn't thinking straight because I was more focused on this war, so I think I ended up just sitting around. And even to the very end of this segment, nothing has come of that camp or my spearman, because once that camp throws off another barbarian, that spearman's going to be a little overloaded, and we have a lot of developed tiles there, our capital's there. I think it was a really bad idea not to start getting to work on that. Alright, here's where I remember that their unique unit is the war, or I didn't remember what it was called, so I had to look up India first, and then I wanted to look up the war elephant just to see what it was. And I was surprised that it's a replacement for the chariot archer. I didn't even remember it being a ranged unit at all. I just remember it was mounted. So at this point I was a little less scared of it, the possibility that he had any. But even if he does, we do have a spearman down there, and of course swordsmen are almost as strong as spearmen versus mounted, so I wasn't really all that worried. Here we're able to actually step in and shoot as well as bombard, so at this point we'll be able to start taking care of that camp. It ends up taking a lot longer than I would have anticipated, but yeah, the timing here, because this guy can do 2 tiles of road, I think the other guy already pre-built the one on the flatland. I forget, I was paying too much attention to meta narration than actual minutia narration. Here I knew that guy was running away, and I had joked that I could bring my scout over to clean him up, but there was a barbarian camp there, so that guy has no chance of survival there. Yeah, here I just defend on the deer tile in perpetuity, and that's totally the wrong way to handle that, I think. Here I'm just contemplating the best way to send all of the military. I knew I wanted one swordsman up north just because Mumbai is to the north, and if we have to block from behind, that would be the way to go, especially if I've got an archer up there. The archer doesn't need to come from the north though, so you can see we got plenty of flatland, plenty of places to step in and shoot, which as you guys know is one of my favorite things to do in the game. Here I think I start talking about how the way everybody's split up, it would be real handy to have two great generals, one to zone of control in the south and one to zone of effect, excuse me, in the north. But we don't, so there's a toss-up of do you want him acting more upon your blockers or acting more upon your shooters? Little bit of a false dichotomy, because if you look at once we collapse in on the city, one great general actually does fine. It's just in the meantime during the setup stage like we're at right now, yes, the two great general would be better. And you will notice coming up in the war to come, one of my biggest problems when it comes to warfare because of my inexperience is that once I kind of look at the units and once I got a game plan of what I think might be best, I start carrying that out, you know, trying to keep in mind contingencies, because sometimes when you step up, visibility, you know, stuff like that, you got to favor the units, get them out of the way, you know, account for variance, all that good stuff. Amid all of that consideration, I tend to forget about my great general. And right here, I think, was one of the first examples of that. Now, if I'm not mistaken, when it comes to melee, okay, this guy's running away, so we just say, okay, we'll slide over and good night. It's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that when it comes to melee versus melee, the great general needs to be influencing the tile that you're attacking into. That's where the fight's taking place. So in this situation, if there was a place for my great general to influence my swordsman but not the warrior he's attacking, it would not actually be under influence. In the end, this particular instance, I didn't actually move him over. I saw that it was enough for the composite bowman and the swordsman, but nevertheless, it would have been better to move the great general onto the tile with the spearmen, just to make sure that's all fully taken care of. Now, that plane came into the city borders of Munich. I actually had forgotten about that, so I'll have to remember now that the roads are all built in the start of the next segment to kind of go put a farm on that, because that'll be an okay tile. Alright, so there's all the weaklings that we've been whittling down. The bombard can finish them off no problem. Yeah, we got workers out building roads, all that empty land, and I just got that one spearman. Now, we do have the backup hand axes. Perhaps that's why I was a little cavalier, but in the end, and two, I also didn't realize the Barbarian Camp in the north was going to take as long as it did. Still, that's no excuse. It totally was the right answer to just start slamming one spearman into another. Because mine probably has promotions. It definitely has the Barbarian, you know, honor opener buff. It would have been a good idea to clear that camp out ASAP, because if it starts throwing off units, we're going to be in trouble down there. We're going to be losing. Luckily, the roads will be up for the most part, so the workers should be freed up to do repairs, but obviously barbarians standing on your tiles. Now, here I see that Washington has furs open up as an option, and he says he's willing to take our silver. So I decided to make the trade just because, and I think I actually pointed out on camera here. Here we actually clear out the melee. I know that breaks up the discipline buff, but finishing off the unit means there's that much less uncertainty in the area. So I think that's the right way to do it. But if we look into Persia, Persia actually has developed silver. So once we take Persia, we'll have that silver back if we trade it. And even if that's not the way that it plays out, you can see here I point to my cities and the city-states. I was saying that if right now silver is out of our trade network. So if one of our cities says we demand silver, or one of our city-states says, hey, we'd like you to connect silver, even if we weren't going to take over Persepolis, all we'd have to do is wait. So if you ever get in a situation where you're just offered, you know, one luxury for another, you might consider taking it just for that reason. Anyways, we got another unit to finish off here. All of our swordsmen are ready to push in. So I'm pretty sure this is the turn I start pushing in my melee. We're just thinking about the best way to take out. I was hoping to heal up that composite bowman another turn, but obviously, unless we have the other guy step, and we didn't have any melee in the range. Now, I was actually surprised I was able to use their roads into the city, and I'm actually confused about how that works, so maybe you guys can explain it for me, because later on, I'm not able to use those exact same roads to get out quickly. Now here, notice I don't actually put any of the ranged into bombard range. The city's at full health. It literally has no reason to favor the melee over the archers just yet. But since we're putting all our melee in, somebody's going to get hit, which means somebody's going to be hurt, which means in subsequent turns he's going to want to favor that one just because it's easier to focus fire it down in theory, and that's when I'll have the archer step in. That was my thought process anyways. You guys can let me know. Sometimes the AI just like acts in an unexpected way. Anyways, the cattles are finished there, so we'll go back to helping finish the roads to Hamburg. And it's really nice, like all our roads just work out together. Okay, so in the counterattack from Delhi, we get a great general. I start sending him over towards Delhi, but then I realize, oh, the war's coming to a close way too quickly. And here we go. That's the honor finisher. So now we can get gold for every unit. And here we go. I show it off. Getting gold for every unit we kill. Unfortunately, we've already killed all of India's units. But that's okay, because the way we did a really good job on our science game, considering this is immortal. So we were able to go to war, you know, like that and stuff. So yeah, we missed out on a little bit of gold, but that's okay, because he, between the mausoleum and all the gold that's on his land, that city's going to be a gold maker anyways. And then of course with the duplicate sugars, we stood to make a fortune anyways. I still think this was a good approach just because of the logistics of where we are compared to where he is. And then of course, based on my style you saw in the China series, there's tech windows, so we basically got the earliest units upgraded. We should be able to have pikemen as we push towards Persepolis. We'll take a break to go towards education, I think it's called. And then, now here's actually a problem. The swordsman's kind of like on his own up there. He's the damaged one. None of our archers can act upon that warrior. Luckily it's just a warrior, so I'm not too worried about it compared to the swordsman. It's pretty weak, but nevertheless I'd like to be able to alleviate that. So anyways, after we have education though, things are going to get really, really sweet. I think I noticed that this mercantile city-state is ripe for yeah, there we go. Yep, nobody's protecting them. That's why we check the declare war screen, just to see if anybody's protecting them. We don't want to piss off the wrong people for the wrong reasons. But once we get into chivalry and we can upgrade our hand axes to knights, then we're going to be a real force to reckon with, because we're going to have some extremely mobile units that were virtually free. Obviously they'll consume a horse while they're mounted, but that's going to be fine. We've got tons of horses as it is. Nobody's been wanting to buy them at all. That's part of the reason we've had such a... Here I'm actually noticing that I could have pillaged the dies and helped to secure... Not on the turn I stepped and shoot, but on subsequent turns. So I think next turn I finally remember to pillage it. That way he's at full health. And of course you get gold from pillaging. I don't go nuts with like pillaging all the tiles. I probably should, like with my melee, because they don't need to be in defense stance right now. But we don't have a worker over there, and our cities are really far away. It's going to be a hard time getting a worker over there. So perhaps it's all for the better that I didn't go on a pillage party, which is a funny phrase because it's so close to piddle party. Anyways, so yeah, my scout does actually take off from that camp, and I do agree sticking around given the circumstances. Now, at this point, it's probably less of a good idea to do it with the scout, just because we do have the military here, and once we're done with Delhi, like, you know, pretty easy. Because that is just a warrior, it's pretty clear I don't need to. I think I remembered to pillage here. That camp's pretty much done for. So now we'll be able to move to the south. I think this is, yeah, this would have been a good idea to move the Great General in before I attacked that camp. Maybe it would have had a different outcome, but whatever. We're still getting those roads up. Yeah, all these turns, I'm just sitting there. That's bad. Anyways, it's just a warrior, so I only need to... in fact, I didn't actually have to throw any archers at it. I could have just weakened both my swordsmen slightly. But that's what I did anyways. So yeah, we'll just take the rest of our shots on the city. Oh yeah, I remember to pillage that. It's actually unfortunate because the dies are a unique luxury. So once we take the city, we don't actually get the dies right away, and I don't have a worker nearby. Sorry if there was a loud pop there. My headset has a microphone that when you swivel it up, it turns off. My throat was getting dry, so yeah, this would be the point to... Now my plan was, because I was able to reuse the roads before, my plan was to pillage the mine, which according to the text on screen is exactly what I did. And then I tried to run away using the roads. Now I know the pillage motion actually uses up a mobility or a movement point. But running on roads means I should have been able to move 2 tiles on the roads, and there was no zonal control. Boat shows up here, so we shoot at it all that we can. If I could shoot at it with the hand axe, I probably would. Especially if it was the finishing blow, so we could get the culture and the money. But we can't, so... Yeah, so here it says, you can see on the screen, it says I, pillaged the mine. So I'm like, okay, but it won't let me go 2 tiles. The only thing I can think of is that the tile I'm on right now belongs to another city, so traveling out of it doesn't count as road-to-road travel. That's the only thing I can think of. So I tried pillaging again, and of course I knew that when you pillage the roads you don't get healed up, but it's actually nice because then once we do take the city, that's one less tile of road maintenance that we'll be paying on. In fact, that's the only one that we would have been paying on right away. There's some other tiles near our borders that might be worth ripping up in case those borders grow later. I'm not quite sure. That city's mostly developed. I did see that there's an iron tile not even within the borders, so we will need a worker over there at some point. Now this is a lightly sticky situation, so I just used the composite bowman to clear out the camp and use this as an opportunity to heal the spearmen. Obviously I want that composite bowman to get back to the south because I've been saving that camp for him. I had no idea it was going to take so long in the north. Now this was amazing to me because, yeah, and especially with Arabia, being friends with them, like to make a friend so close to India, and then Arabia to be on the same side, this might actually help to cushion the diplomatic hate we'll get from this, which is great because when we go off to fight Persia, the last thing we need is somebody to try to avenge India. And it's occurring to me, we really need to get a scout on the other side of Persia too, just because we don't know who's over there. Anyway, city's falling, so I used my back foot swordsman to soften it up, and then I used my damaged swordsman to take it over. That makes sense. If the city's at 1 health, then you can't lose a unit with the crushing blow. We make a puppet, and then we take stock of the buildings. And look, they've already bought a pagoda, so that's really nice. That's that much less faith that we'll have to buy in the long run. They also got a shrine, so once the city starts producing for us, we'll get even more faith per turn. So this was quite the acquisition. Unfortunately, they don't have a library built. And when it comes to the National College, or I should say National Wonders, it does take into account the amount of cities you have as far as how costly it is to build. But in this case, because this is a puppet, we don't have to have a library built in this city. Now, I did know that already, but if you look here, I believe Berlin says it needs a construction project. Okay, here we bother with selling off the gold. And bear with me here. I think it was Marbazir at one point had produced a list of what friendly trade values are. I didn't have that handy. I don't know that I've ever tracked it down. I just remember hearing him talk about it once. Not sure if he published it or if it was just for his own records. But I sit here and flounder a bit trying to figure out what to deal. And in the end, I just like, whatever, I don't need the flat rate. Right. In fact, the gold per turn would actually be better because we were already operating at a deficit and we had a decent amount of gold anyways. And Persia's actually willing to give us full value as well. So that was really nice. Unfortunately, we don't have the dies because we pillaged it. In retrospect, knowing that I didn't have a worker nearby, it probably would have been better to just continue with a damaged composite bowman so that once we took the city we could have the happiness. And that's when I got the idea, okay, let's march on Mumbai, see if we can find a worker to steal so that we have one in the area. I wasn't even thinking about that barbarian camp, and that just goes to show how tunnel vision can affect us. And I know it affects me in particular, and that is why I tend to, in fact, you can see with this worker, I'm like, okay, I guess I gotta go over there. I wasn't even thinking about that barbarian camp. So Thank you for the person who pointed out. So yeah, here I wanted to point out that if you do build another city, this is what the screen will look like. It will say finished National College, but the city won't, or the building won't actually be in your city. And so when I saw it said finished National College on the exact same turn I took over a city, I kind of did a double take. Now I already knew about the whole, the puppet doesn't need to have the requisite building, but it will contribute to the building cost. So it's just by chance that we happen to land the crushing blow on Delhi the exact turn the National College is up. But the good news is the National College is now up. So we are honor, we are Raging Barbarians, obviously, and we got a 3-city start, already took our first capital, and hopefully at some point here I look at our unit supply, because I think that's a very important thing to do once you take over the city. Yeah, okay, so here our unit supply is doing great, and that's fine because we're still fighting barbarian camps. We need to take a worker, so all the space we can get, and of course we're trying to get all of these cities to grow as much as possible. Now at this point in the game, it's my intention to eventually annex Delhi, because that's the only way we're going to be able to purchase a missionary. Here what I'm doing is I'm contemplating purchasing a composite bowman down in the south just to help deal with that camp right now. It's not a bad idea. I was also looking at buying a horseman more towards the west, so I could run and hopefully grab a worker off of India. But I noticed I didn't have the money to buy both, so in the end I chose to buy neither. Buying the composite bowman in the south wouldn't have been a bad idea, just because given the detached nature of Delhi, it's really going to be in our best interest to leave not just a swordsman back there for the human monument, but also a composite bowman as well, because in fact another unit on top of that, so that we can have a human monument and a proper death squad for the barbarian camps around there. But as you've seen from the home defense here, even just 2 units stepping out for a minute might be able to get us another unit in the area. Here's where I noticed that after the barbarians being in our lands and growing in population, I never quite properly fixed the tiles, so address that now. But I was thinking really hard, okay, should I be building a horseman, buying a horseman, composite bowman, so I gave that some consideration. If I'm not mistaken, in the end I chose not to buy anything. I figured if I needed it that bad I could build it in the capital, and I thought about it for a while. I think I ended up going with the Colosseum. The taking of India did put us deeper into unhappiness than I anticipated, but that's partially because we pillaged the dies, and like I said, I'm pretty sure in retrospect that was a bad idea, just because it was the dies. Like, I didn't need to heal that unit up. We had a melee he was sufficiently distracted with, and there we go. We got our city connection to both cities established in full on the exact same turn. Now between that and selling off the sugar, just like that, overnight our money problems were mostly solved. I think this is the point in the game where we switch over to a positive cash flow, and that's without Delhi chipping in. Obviously Delhi's in resistance, I think it's called, so they're just not contributing anything to our empire. Now I didn't step into the city tile just because we would have been zoned or controlled by the barbarian boat. I know that's silly, but it's true. Or maybe it's the land affects the water. I think it's the water affects the land. It's kind of dumb because that's not how it would go if zone of control was the real thing. It's not like people are reaching over the side of the boat saying, "Hey, slow down." So yeah, I thought they already said that it's good that we're all friends or whatever, but it is nice that Arabia is basically reaffirming. Now here, luckily the tile grew exactly where my worker, and this is when I had the idea, okay, maybe I shouldn't be, making that trip. I will, in fact, and this is also the turn where I'm like, okay, now it's time to. But notice I don't take the citizen off the ivory. Now, because we are in positive cash flow, I do think it would have been okay to come off the ivory, especially now that we have the honor finisher. I don't think gold's going to be a problem anytime soon. We are about to hit the medieval era, and that's really great because that means our next social policy, hopefully we don't have to take it until we're actually into that era. We can go into the gold. I forget what it's called, but Okay, now the road's actually pillaged, so I couldn't test my theory. And I was so glad to see a worker here. Obviously, he's going to retreat, but he can't see my spearman there once he does retreat, so he'll be dangled out again. I'm like, yes, here comes a worker. But coming up, this is where I make a little mistake here because I thought the one would be able to reach the hill. But this is why I actually just shut down the recording as soon as this happened, what's coming up here, because India dangled a missionary in front of me, and it's got full charges, which means I don't even have to annex Delhi now. We'll have the missionary to go spread this religion to our cities right now. We don't have to annex it. We don't have to wait to collect the faith. And I was so geeked. This is part of the reason why I really wish this could have been like a natural narration as I was going along, because the excitement I experienced when I saw that, like I wasn't even thinking about that. Like, oh, this is such a good religion. Let's just go take Delhi. I never even thought to me, like, just camp and like take one of his missionaries. But anyways, that's what happens. And so at the time, I just shut the recording down. So this is the point where I'm going to go ahead and thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for the patience. Oh, we got a horseman showed up here. Luckily, when we cleared this camp, we get another spearman. So those two spearmen should be able to handle that. And now the Great General and composite bowman are freed up to head to the south. But I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. Thank you so much for being patient with me, having to narrate after the fact yet again. Hopefully the little screeches I had to cut out weren't too like visually distracting or jarring or whatever. But yeah, we got the capital, we got the religion, and oh my gosh, I even now I can't, like, the fortuitiveness, right? Like if we had a worker over there, I wouldn't have even been marching on Mumbai. But it was because we didn't have a worker over that way that I was like, okay, let's start heading to Mumbai. And sure enough, he dangles a missionary. The missionary happens to be at full charge. I think before I sign off, I do notice that this is attributable. He's only friends with India. So even though we're friends with Washington and that's their ally, I decided to tribute. I don't know what the ramifications for that are going to be. Hopefully it's nothing serious. Yeah, here we go. I choose the Colosseum. I think I'm going to change that in the beginning of the next part. But yeah, we decide between discipline and the Great General being there. We didn't quite finish him off, but that's fine. He's done for. We'll just go move the... But anyways, I want you guys to enjoy the rest of your day. This series has been an absolute blast. And there we go. This is where I realize it's in. So I end up just shutting down the recording. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one. Take care.